Oh, David, he just called me and told me. Here's that you guys know about. What? Okay, so we're going to start, and we really know that you're the stars of the show. I'm so happy to welcome everyone. Actually, we're not quite yet, just yet. Sorry, they're not rolling yet, right? Oh, we have to. Sorry.
But that sounded awesome.
That was a good warm up. That was a warm up. Because we have to call the meeting to order and stuff first, and then we'll. That's okay. Thank you. Everybody, you guys ready? No, we want you here. So we're going to call to order the school committee meeting of March 15th, 2018, and start with a Pledge of Allegiance. If we can all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded today from the Sargent Elementary School kindergarten classroom. And we're going to first start with a student report from Caitlin Dolly from the high school.
Hi. Not too much going on right now with finals and everything coming up. Mr. North Andover is happening this Friday, and I'm pretty positive my counterpart Liam's at rehearsal, so that's why he couldn't make it, but I'm sure he's going to do great. Tickets beforehand, I know, are $10, and if you're at the high school, you can buy them during lunch. I'm not sure how much the price increases at the door, but I do feel like there's a slight price increase. I feel like I was told. And then with like all the different snowstorms, all the teachers are just trying their best to make sure that we're all prepared for finals. So hopefully the next snowstorm just kind of passes through and doesn't cause any issues. I mean,
yes.
Here's hoping. Yeah, kind of what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is Relay for Life this weekend?
It is.
Yes. I was like, Liam kind of knows
6 p.m.
Okay.
to 6 p.m. on Saturday to 6 a.m. on Sunday,
Sunday.
and we're all invited to come on by. Even if you want to come at 2 or 3 in the morning, you're welcome.
I might just do that.
And if anybody needs someone that they'd like to sponsor or make a contribution or donation to, there are a lot of high school students who are participating that we could certainly get you a name if you want to make a donation to the program. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Katie.
Now we are going to have a very exciting presentation. Love to turn it over to Ms. Leahy.
About the high school kids, to the kindergarten kids. Welcome to Sargent School. We're so excited. This big news at Sargent School, and we got some great people that are going to show you some really great stuff tonight. But we couldn't do it without terrific teachers. Can we have 2 claps for terrific teachers right here? Go! For Ms. Marks, for Mrs. Mullane, and for Mrs. Joyce. We want to thank them for all their hard work, and you're in for some fun and a great night. So thank you all for coming.
So we're going to talk quickly because we're anxious to see you guys reading. So I just want to introduce everybody here. This is Ann Joyce. She's one of our literacy coaches. Lisa Mullane is a kindergarten teacher in this classroom, and Nicole Radalski is a 2nd grade teacher at Thompson. Lisa and Nicole have been our lab classrooms where we have been using the reading units of study this year to look at how it works, how the students are learning, what we feel about that, incorporated that with the writing unit study. And we are going to be using the reading unit to study. We've seen great progress with our students with that. Anne has been co-teaching in the kindergarten class since the beginning of the year, so we're getting some really good data from that. It's not like we're just popping in once in a while. Jackie Taylor, who has a brand new baby boy, so she's out on maternity leave, but she was here till early January, and she was co-teaching with Nicole. And Anne is now in the 2nd grade class. So we have a lot of data we can share as well. But we're not going to talk a lot about that now because you're here to see the stars of the show. So I'm going to pass this on to Anne.
All right, before we get started, I just wanted to give people a quick overview of the units of study and let you know a little bit about how they work in both kindergarten and 2nd grade. So in kindergarten, we start out by building a reading identity, and we do that by helping kids understand that they're readers just by reading environmental print. We use books like emergent reading books and informational books. Then we move on and teach them that they have superpowers, and you may see a super cape come out today. And the kids are introduced to superpowers that help them with reading around concepts of print, things like using one-to-one correspondence, using the pictures for support, and things like that. As they get stronger as readers, we teach them how to use their extra strength superpowers and how they can use their extra strength pointer power, their extra strength snapword power, or their extra strength picture power to help them when things get tricky. And now at the end of the year, we're moving into building avid readers. And this is where we take all of the skills that we've taught all year, and we teach them really how to use those and develop their stamina around reading, how to think about characters. Today we were marking Post-it notes in our books to notice if characters were feeling happy or sad. And so we'll continue to develop skills around stamina and comprehension over the next few weeks. In 2nd grade, we start out building the bridge between 1st grade and 2nd grade skills. It's really a big transition when they come from 1st grade to 2nd grade. In 1st grade, they're doing a lot of work around learning to read, and in 2nd grade, we're really starting to make that transition to reading to learn. And so they talk about building good habits at the beginning of the year, and then they move into reading nonfiction, and they talk a lot about becoming an expert. They use the vocabulary that they learn, and they make connections across texts. Then we are working on foundational skills now as books get longer. So as kids get into longer chapter books, they need to be able to hold on to the story over a longer period of time. They need to notice how characters change. And then finally, we end the year with Series Book Club. And this comes at a great time because we really help kids become big fans of books. And as they go into the summer months, hopefully they have a group of books that they love to read, and they can make connections across the series and even start to notice the author's style and start noticing important features of the text. So there are many different components to the workshop. The nice part is the structure is very similar from grade to grade. And teachers are very familiar with the workshop model because of the writer's workshop that we've been doing for the past few years now. The workshop model starts out with a brief connection, which sets the stage for learning. Usually there's a brief story or a connection to the previous learning. Then we move on to a teaching point, and the teacher typically will say, today I'm going to teach you, and that alerts the students to what they're going to learn. The teaching point is typically a strategy that will help students read better or stronger. Then they practice the teaching point under the guidance of the teacher, and then they practice with their partners. And then we go on to the best part, which is the independent reading time. Our kindergarten friends have been working really hard. They're up to 15 minutes of independent reading time, and they're up to about 12 minutes of partner time. And then we come together at the end of the lesson for a share to reconnect with what we've learned for the day. Two other components of the units of study are shared reading and read aloud. And while they don't necessarily happen during the workshop time, they're critical components because they give kids access to texts that they might not necessarily be able to read on their own. And this is a critical time for teachers to model the skills that kids need to use. So, with that quick overview, we'll pass it over to Mrs. Mullane.
All right, so I'd first like to introduce our readers to you today. So when I say your name, would you just raise your hands? You don't have to get up. So we have Arush. Can you raise your hand so everyone can see you? Good job. And we have Talia, and we have Kieran, and Charlotte, and Mackenzie, and Rhea, and we have Hunter, and we have Andrew. And boys and girls, what do we do every time we start Readers Workshop? What do we sing when we come to the rug? Can we do the gathering song for everyone to hear? Will you sing with me? With Mrs. Joyce, ready? Our gathering, we gathering on the rug, on the rug. Everyone is here now, finding their own space now.
We are
Here,
we are
you're very good. We start our Readers Workshop with the gathering song. And then, like Mrs. Joyce said, we do have our connection. So, boys and girls, welcome to the rug. I'm so glad you're here. We are very excited to have you share all your reading skills tonight. And then what we do is we talk about our teaching point, which is skill. So, readers, I want to remind you that all year long we have been using our superpowers, right? And what did I wear when we talked about superpowers? Hey, would you like to see it on again? It hasn't come out in a very long time. Did you bring your superpowers today? Oh, well, I hope so. Mrs. Joyce is going to help. Okay, and Mrs. Joyce has, but that's okay. We know where it is. Okay, so super readers, going to go for our superpowers in the year. We have friend powers. Are you ready? That's right. Point power. We have reread power. We have partner power. We have picture power. We have snap word power. We can read those words in a snap. We have sound power. We can tap out words. We have, this is my favorite, distance power. That's the hardest power. Never give up. We try again. We have book talk power, and I've heard you do book talk. That's when they just tell their partner what their book is about. We have pattern power. Are you ready to use all those powers tonight? Yes. Okay. All righty. So these are the super reader powers that they've brought here, and then we'll use This is what we do when we read with a partner. We have to decide how we're going to read. Are we going to read seesaw or echo? Seesaw is where friend reads the page. Back and forth. Echo. If I say it, what do? You echo it? So if I say, I like ducks, you say, that's right. We can also choral read. We read together. We put one book in the middle. You'll see that. We hunt for those snap words that we know in a snap, and then we can even add a pinch of ourselves. If we see a shark, we could say, I like sharks. Sharks are scary. Oh, nothing on the back. Okay. So, we have one final one. We've been learning about being avid readers. Can you show me what an avid reader looks like? Now show me what a blah reader looks like. Oh, yeah. Oh. Right? Avid readers are looking at their books. Their eyes are on their pages. Blah readers are counting the squares on the ceiling. So here's what an avid reader does. They read a lot. They find places everywhere to read. They keep a stack of books in waiting. They can't stop reading. They really pay attention to their book. And they feel, this is what we did today, they feel what the characters are feeling. Am I an avid reader? There's something on the back? Oh, nope, nothing on the back. Am I an avid reader? Am I an avid reader? Yes, are you avid readers? All right, are you ready to do some reading? All right, Mrs. Joyce. So, friends, will you get into your partner position? You can spread out a little bit. Partners sit shoulder to shoulder, side by side. Would you like to turn around? You turn your body so you're facing this way. Yes. Girls, you can move over here. Turn your body so you're... Go. All right, take out your reading mats. Put your books on your reading mats, please. Turn your body so you're facing this way. Karen, this way. You're with Arush. We're gonna do partner reading. Partner reading. All right, take all your books out. Yep, open up your mats. Put your books on the green side. Take your books, yeah. No, you can leave your post. All righty. Now, put those books on your green side. What they do is they start with their books on the green side and they read from green to red. Good job. All right, Hunter's ready. Talia's ready. Andrew's ready. Hey, Rhea, put them all on the green. All righty. Boys and girls, we're going to demonstrate seesaw read. So if I touch your shoulder, would you get a book ready? And Charlotte, pick out a book. We're going to do seesaw reading. The microphone. Pick up on your reading. So pick your first book. Would you give your partner a book talk about your book?
This is about monkey hiding from his mom.
What is your book about?
Catching spiders.
Rhea, what's your book about?
A worm is hot.
And there's what? What's your book about?
It's about a gorilla stealing a key and then he unlocks all the animals.
All right, start going. We're doing seesaw, boys and girls. Seesaw. Okay, so you read a page.
Dad runs after the big spider. With a net. Still hot. Worm gets another fan. It's about a cat looking for a mouse. Meows hunt.
Let me see, sorry.
Tabby cat looked for a mouse. No mouse in the box. And ate the bug. Mouse makes a phone call. Pizza.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Put your hands on your head. Now we're going to switch to echo So if you were the person that I tapped, let the next person book, and you're going to echo read.
It's about our flag.
We're going to do echo.
Flag.
Can you echo?
My
How it's echo. So you book. Give her a book talk. Now, what's that book about?
It's about a monkey finds lots of balloons and then he finds a needle and
He popped it? You want to hear more of the story? Okay. You have that one too? Oh, that. No. Right.
That is Piggy goodnight. Piggy kisses Dad goodnight. Piggy kisses Dad goodnight. A friend listens. A friend plays with you. A friend plays with you. You are my friend. You are my.
All right, boys and girls, 1, 2, 3. Hands on your head. You did an amazing job using your super reading powers. Give yourself 3 claps. Awesome. Would you please clean up your book? Did you want to read some more? Yes, you did. Boys and girls, while you're packing up, can anybody tell me what they like about Reader's Workshop? Who wants to tell me what they like about Reader's Workshop? Want to tell me? What do you like?
Get to read.
You get. What do you like?
I like because I love to read.
Okay. What do you like, Arush?
I like to read a lot.
Oh, anyone else want to add something? You want to say anything that you like about anyone else? You want to say what you like?
Reading.
Do you like partner read or private read? Or both? Oh. Want to tell me?
I like partnering.
You like read. What about you, Rhea? Partner, private, or both?
Both.
Good job. This is Jay. So that was a little bit of Reader's Workshop. I just want to tell you a couple of things I've noticed. Like I said, this is my first year doing this. I think it's been a great experience. I've enjoyed working with Anne, Reen. They've been wonderful coaches. I love that the children are reading every single day. They are looking at books anywhere from 25 to 35 every day, which is wonderful. The mini lessons go along really well with reading, which is a great connection. That's why I think it's a great program. The children really learned well with that. They love working with partners and sharing. You can see they love to talk with their partners, and they are on task most of the time. This is pretty exciting. They can also be teachers, and what they'll do is when they're reading, if their friend doesn't know a word, they'll whisper. They'll say, use your point power, use your picture power, and they're helping each other to learn, and that's really what it's all about. They listen to me all day long. They don't have to me to this. I kind of guide them, and then I set them off. I think their comprehension skills are amazing. The books are wonderful. They can do a book talk about the books they've been reading. They get new books every week. That's been really wonderful. And I think it's just been a wonderful experience, and they love reading.
Before I pass it off to Nicole, I just want to thank both Nicole and Lisa for inviting me into their classrooms this year. It's been just a great experience, not only working with kindergarten kids and watching their growth, but watching the second graders grow as readers too. And it's just been great collaborating with both of you. So thank you.
Are my class, and the huge difference I see from other reading programs that I've taught. This is my third year teaching reading workshop, but this is my first year with support and help, so it's been an amazing year for me. But the biggest difference is that student engagement. They are picking the books that they would like to read, and the lessons revolve around their interests. So if they want to study frogs in nonfiction, they pick all the books about frogs, and they become an expert on it. So I think that motivates them and keeps them focused and engaged. They keep a reading log in second grade, so they can keep track of how many books they've read, how long they're reading. I can't believe how long you guys are reading. My second graders are reading alone by themselves for 25, sometimes 30 minutes, and then with their partner for 10 to 15 minutes. And they all could go longer. We just don't have enough time in the day. So it's been great. And the engagement is the I see with the kids is they're focused at books all the time. When they came into my room, they have a pile of books. They're marking their spots to talk with their partners about interesting things they find. They have good stamina, and the comprehension. They're working on comprehension all the whole workshop time, whether it's marking a spot of what they think is important, something that's confusing. They ask their partner about it. We've already done fiction and nonfiction. I think the next slide is a video, right? Is it? Oh, this is a picture of them keeping. So in the beginning of the year, they were drawing comprehension, and later in the year, they kept sticky notes of important parts throughout the book, and then they put it on a strip, and they had to retell it to their partner, kind of like a book talk that you were doing, and they were introducing their book of what they've read. And then the next slide, this is a video. So this is a student who became an expert on koalas, and she had read multiple books about koalas and marked important information, and then she had to report it to a different student from a different class. So it's like becoming an expert on a topic that she chose. And one little note about this, this year I was lucky enough to have the classroom library, which is something that the Lucy Calkins workshop put together. And this has really helped with being able to have the books that kids are interested in, and more books, more current books. So that was really great. So this video kind of speaks for itself. Talking about koalas.
They eat mostly
his book marked with some pages. And, you know, the goal for that unit was to be able to open up the book and just be able to talk about it. They are now an expert, and they weren't reading from the book anymore. They really learned so much, and they were able to present that to somebody else. We've covered all. Anything else?
Just a quick comment about, you saw how much use of oral language we had both with the kindergartners reading and then the second graders. That really ties into the whole writing piece. If they can't speak and use that oral language, get those thoughts out in that way, it makes the writing more difficult. So that's the really nice intersection between the two of them. And interesting, just when Nicole just said they had to have that information, they had to know that information to be able to do the partner talk here, really moves on up through the grade. I was in another school working with some kids today that struggle with how to pull the research out and not just copy the words from the book. So we're teaching them at a young age how to research, get that information, and be able to talk about that information and use that in a different way. So we're building those scaffolds right from a very young age. So just a few points, but I don't want to talk too much because I know that it's hard to sit. But does anybody have questions?
Do you notice a difference with the reading, with this reading program? Good.
So I have three. All three have gone through Ms. Mullane. So my other two obviously went through the original program. Not gonna lie, at first I was a little thrown off by it because it's changed for me as a parent too. Plus she's kid number 3. But to that effect, all of a sudden, because I had emailed Mrs. Mullane, I was concerned that she wasn't reading yet at this point in the year, and all of a sudden it just clicked. So the program is definitely working. It's different. It's very different that the way they're being taught and how they're picking up the sounds and the pictures and using each other versus, you know, sitting in the centers and one child at a time. So I think it's a good change. It's nice to see. Also very pleased to see that my child was reading.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah, that made me happy.
Good.
I mean, you got sound out first.
That's right. I was just going to say I have a kindergartner and a first grader both at Kittredge, and I've just noticed, you know, especially Jack has just exploded with reading. It's just incredible to watch it happen when it just clicked, like you just said. It's amazing. Very proud.
So I have a couple of questions for the teachers. And first of all, I would like to comment that this seems to tie in terrifically as well with social emotional learning. You're showing so many ways to share, so many ways for partners to work together, so many ways to make connections in the classroom and to make relationships through reading. So I'm imagining that you're seeing that on the playground and in other places, so I'm excited about that. I wonder about engaging, I can tell these are all avid readers. I myself had a reluctant reader, and I'm wondering how you're feeling that engages. I'm wondering about teacher time. I'm looking at those sacks of books, and I remember many years ago when we had closets full of trade books that weren't organized, that was really a challenge on our teacher time. And I'm also wondering about space for your Lucy Calkins libraries. Is there enough space in classrooms for that if we were to have the opportunity to expand that? So I don't know if you can answer all those now or if that should be.
Well, definitely, I'll address as far as space. I keep a corner over there. I did organize them by level, and I have the kids be responsible for that. So they have a day of the week where they book shop. So they will take their bag of books, and they will look at the letter on it, and they will return them, and then they will choose more. So I just do it every day. I take about 5 or 6 kids, and that's something that we've kind of worked on, and it's worked out really nicely. So as far as choosing those books, the library is wonderful. It is extensive, but I do have it organized, and there's stickers and everything, so it makes it very easy. For the reluctant reader, we also will pull small groups or we'll do conferencing. So if there's a child that's a little reluctant, maybe he or she might come one-on-one or with the partner, and we'll find books that are of interest to that child and do it that way.
Yeah, I love the choice opportunities.
Wonderful. And you can see it, they'll say, well, or I chose this book a few weeks ago. I'm going to choose it again. It really puts the choice. What? Yes, go ahead.
For shared reading, and so maybe before the book goes into their hand, they've heard that story maybe in the whole class or in a small group, so they have exposure to the story. So we really do try to support them in being successful. And I think that first unit in kindergarten, We Are Readers, I mean, we had a parade up and down the hall, and we were marching, and the kids were saying, "We are readers." So there's that identity. So I get what you're saying about the reluctant readers, because I have them in my own house, and I can't say that any of the kids in this class look that way. Like, everybody is engaged and excited around reading.
I have a classroom library set up very similar, like a whole corner of my room where they're, have a letter on it. The kids are responsible for book shopping. There's a classroom job to clean up the library. They're it is a lot of work because you bring out like nonfiction, so then you got to load up, the library with nonfiction. And right now I'm doing same book partners, so like I have to have 2 of every book, and I'm trying. It is a lot of work, but like the kids are like, "Oh, look, we got 2 copies of this book," and they're helping and they're excited because it keeps changing every year. Like, and later in the year, I haven't even put out the books for the series club. At the very end of 2nd grade, they read series books, and we're hoping that will get them reading all summer long, going back to the library to get another series or the next book in the series. So, and then one of the connections that I just remembered, in writing in 2nd grade, they do book reviews, and they write about a book that they enjoy, and they recommend it to somebody else. And it just ties so nicely with the reading workshop. So then they're like, "Oh, I want to read that book. He just wrote it. It was his favorite." And so there's so many great connections with the reading and the writing.
I noticed that the children, during free choice time, are writing stories that kind of mimic what they've seen. So one of the big ones they're doing is they're writing pattern stories. And that's something that we talk about with the earliest of books. So a lot of them will say, like, this is one, Dad, Mom, and Victoria. This is by Tyler. And he even wrote a book talk on the back. He said this book is about Mom and Dad and Victoria, which is really, it's very telling. And he has a pattern. I like Mom. I like Victoria. And I think Dad's in there too. I like Dad. Yeah. So I think that they're taking what they've learned and they're combining with that writing. And this is during free choice. I mean, they can with blocks and Play-Doh and things. And this is what a lot of them are doing, is writing stories, but they're predictable. And what were you doing at free choice today? Reading. You were reading. I had a bunch of them over there reading with me. So, and they write. They love, and you can see that the patterns, especially those earlier books, they have patterns. They're putting it into their book. So it's really exciting to see. It ties so well with the Lucy Calkins writing.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make one comment too, just related to Nicole, and you'll have to help me with the title of the book. But I was in her class earlier in the year, and there was a boy that I saw was kind of not as engaged as maybe we would have liked to have seen him. So I went over and worked with him, and he was actually a really good reader. And when Nicole got the libraries, she said that this boy, like, his eyes lit up. So it was because there was choice, as you mentioned, and things that he was really interested in, and he's like devouring the books now. So that's a big piece of it, is the choice, but the libraries also provide a number of high-quality, high-interest books for the kids that maybe didn't exist there before. And for some kids, that is the reluctance. There's nothing here that's like really great for me I want to dive into. But that little boy was amazing. So I can't remember if was it Mercy Watson or
It's Mercy.
Characters.
From Mercy Watson.
Yeah.
He like jumped out of the library. I was like, look, it's Lee right there from Mercy Watson.
Yep. You have Leroy Ningle.
You know, one thing I just want to say is I was in this class, I think, like the first week of school, maybe. And if I'm watching at home and I'm seeing these amazing kids doing an awesome job, you guys did a really good job, I would be worried, wait a minute, my kid needs to be able to read like that in kindergarten. And I'm going to tell you, in the first few weeks of school, it was just about getting books in hand, making sure they were the right way up, making sure that you could actually turn the pages. A lot of these guys were reading books. So this does not where we expect you to be in September. It really is just making sure that we can pick out pictures, that we know how to turn pages. And that's what I saw just a few short months ago. And now we've come to this. Yes.
But who's counting?
Every day, I know, every day. And like I said,
Should be 115.
and I said, it's not going to work. But you know what? It's building on routine and pattern, and it's making sure that you're consistent.
Could I add one thing? What's really been interesting, and it's a change from the libraries that we've had in the past, is that these new books are much more representative of the kids we have the pleasure to teach and the honor to teach in this district. So the diversity and the representation of the books are more representative of the population we have here in North Andover, and I think that's a huge change.
Yeah, you guys are amazing.
Thank the students and the families for coming here tonight. You know, when we hear about the program that's out there and, you know, how it's working and how it's happening, you know, we're hearing about it in a room. But to see you guys reading, you guys did an absolutely fantastic job, and you should all be really proud of yourselves, and you should be proud of them too. I know, you know, I've got 3 kids, and it was harder as the third came along. I don't know why, but, you know, she struggled more than the others. But I love this like collaborative reading style that's there. I remember being in school and thinking, all right, there's 3 more paragraphs and I'm 3 more kids and I hope I get the shortest paragraph, you know. But this is just them, you know, working with somebody, and if they're struggling, they're helping each other, and they're working through, and I think, you know, we heard, you know, through the microphone and all that, you know, just they're confident, you know, like they're not struggling through that. I mean, you know, maybe some of them they have read these before, but I mean, they were just, for kindergarten, it's fantastic. Awesome job.
And they take those skills and they read my morning message, and I'll put up something, and they're reading all the time. It's unbelievable to see. They just can't, you know, I do a poem every week. I read that before I've introduced it. It's really nice to see it.
No, it's awesome.
And before they leave, I just want to again thank our fabulous teachers taking this on this year.
It's time.
All right. Tom, if I could see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You need to take a 5-minute break. Yeah.
They don't have to leave. But thank you.
Well done, team.
Station. Thank you all. That was really fantastic. And we talked about this at Thompson 2 weeks ago, and now being here at Sargent, it is so great to have these meetings in the schools, and certainly look forward to continuing that tradition as we go along. So we're moving on to public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? This would be a good time for that. Yes, but if that's what you want to comment on, this would be the time.
Oh, right, but,
You would come to the mic, please. Right up here? It is. Despite the classroom, it's still official business. Yes.
my name is Karen Klein, and I'm 5 Cricket Lane. In 2005, I asked the town Board of Selectmen if they would be willing to have a poet laureate for the town of North Andover. And they said, first, what is a poet laureate? And after they found out what it was, they said, sure, we'll do it. So we've had a poet laureate since 2006, and I have also been a very strong advocate for the work of Anne Bradstreet over the years, trying to bring her name out, because there are pretty close to just 3 things in the whole world that I can find that are named or in honor of her. The gate, the Bradstreet Gate at Harvard College, the marker in Old Burying Ground, and I totally forget the third one. It's really out of my head, but there's nothing. In Europe, in America, there's nothing. And then when the Bradstreet School went down, it really wasn't for her anyway, it was for her husband Simon. And when this school was named, my son was the first class. He graduated from the first class at Bradstreet. At Sargent. And I was so happy it was named for a lady. I was just so very happy for that. And Anne Bradstreet has one very special poem that I can give you that is very short, and it covers the children that she absolutely loved. And Helen's going to know this poem. We've been talking a lot. This book by Annie yet unread, I leave for you when I am dead, that being gone, here you may find what was your living mother's mind. Make use of what I leave and love, and God shall bless you from above. I think we're doing that with the naming of this school in her honor. You're making use of what she left. And we are her legacy. And we're harvesting her heritage by honoring her with that name. There's so much more to it. You would be here for hours. Mark knows. Thank you very much. That's all for now.
Oh, please.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Mark Salvo, 179 Coventry Lane. It's nice to be back in the school. I happen to be chairman of the school building committee at the time that we completed the educational specifications and the architectural designs for the school. So it was a delight to see it in good use. I can't recite poetry, but I can appeal to you to make poetic correction of history. I'll be differing for a moment with my friend. When this school was named, I had urged that time that this school be named after Cato and Lydia Freeman and their family. And it was the strong consensus second choice of the then school committee. And that school committee paused and said, when we have an appropriate building, we should in fact name something after the Freeman family. As a bit of a stopgap, the house at the middle school was named after Cato Freeman. And while appropriate, my rationale at the time for this school was that a Freeman family named school was appropriate exclusively for an elementary school or younger grades. That there are wonderful names that have been suggested. I was very frankly thrilled by 3 things. Number one, the dynamic scoring of the advisory committee that came together, which overwhelmingly suggested that the Freeman family school was the most appropriate choice. And I was very appreciative for the transparent manner in which all of that was reported, and a very, very good description of each of the names. It seems to me that name and place ought to go together. I would urge you strongly not to choose a generic name. There's too much history and there's too much that deserves to be celebrated, maybe even repaired, about North Andover's history that suggests that you should name it after a person. I do believe that the Bradstreet name is a wonderfully appropriate name, but unfortunately, no child who goes to that kindergarten is going to be able to read that literature or poetry. And in fact, there's a wonderful trade that ought to take place, that Freeman House should in fact be named after the Bradstreet, where the children and students and staff in that school could actually study and learn and appreciate that which has been presented, and that every child can understand the concept of family, the concept of reparation, that oddly enough, it was what was then our town meeting that denied Lydia and Cato Freeman's 8 children to not go to the then town-supported school. And it would be wonderful for a public body as your own to change that and to honor the reparation that those children and that family deserve. I think it's an appropriate name in an appropriate place at an appropriate time. And I hope that you could appreciate the poetic justice. Thank you very much.
Any other comment? Thank you. So next on our agenda would be an exciting moment. We are going to introduce our new...
You have exciting moments usually?
I think this is very exciting in a different way. Our new middle school principal, George Gonsalves. And I don't know if Mr. Gilligan wants to say something, or Dr. Price.
Well, I'm thrilled to introduce George Gonsalves here tonight. We're so excited. The past 7 years, he served as the principal of the McCall Middle School in Winchester, Massachusetts. Prior to that, he served 7 years as the vice principal at the Briscoe Middle School in Beverly. And before that, he was at the Fuller Middle School in Framingham, serving as an English teacher, an EL teacher, and a football coach. He also served 8 years in the National Guard as a corporal and Company B, 1st Battalion, 181st Light Infantry Division.
Gardner, Mass.
Yeah. And last but not least, throughout a very, very rigorous process, his ability to communicate and connect with parents, students, and staff really stood out. His ability to speak as an instructional leader really stood out. And I think most importantly for myself and Dr. Price, I don't want to speak for you, but his passion and love of kids was unparalleled to any interview I've had in the several years. So I'm thrilled to introduce George Gonsalves here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind words. I have to tell you, it just feels so good to be recognized in that way, because when I eventually retire someday long from now, that's my hope anyway, I hope that people remember me for how much passion and love I put into my work. I can't imagine doing anything different in life. No job is as fulfilling as the work we do as educators. And my friends in the private sector, they are happy, but they're not happy like me. And they'll tell me, they're like, I can't wait to retire from this job and volunteer, work in a school, do something else, because I want that. I want that kind of happiness. And it isn't to say the work isn't hard, as we all know. No job's more important, and what we do every day is just that, just the most important thing in the world. And those kids, they just fill our tanks. My connections with kids, my interactions with kids, my interactions with staff about kids, that's what fills your tank. That's what makes you get up a little extra early the next day because you're excited to get to work, like a snow day or a field trip. It's that same energy and emotion, and I'm just so happy to be able to join the North Andover public school system. I have yet to not get more and more excited about coming to this district. The more I know, the happier I am to come here. The more people I meet, as Dr. Price put it, there are good people here in North Andover. And that's all I've met. Either you're all amazing actors or it's true. So I'm looking forward to being a part of this.
Exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for not making me sing.
That comes later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Great.
George. Thank you. I
Yes.
came in a little late. Can we explain the setup here first? I'm sorry. Did you guys talk about this before I got here?
We did not talk about it. Those are the tables we had, and they
Really?
chose them.
Did someone do the best Tommy Boy imitation? Like,
It was already set up, so I'm sorry, sir. Nothing to report.
We just want you to have confidence in those that you've chosen to run the North
Yeah, I
Andover
do.
Public Schools over here in the corner.
I've seen you both on a Vesper before, so I guess this.
Yeah,
should be a huge
whatever
shock.
it takes.
That's right. So next on the agenda is our consent agenda to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I will move to approve the minutes of March 1st, 2018 as presented in the packet.
Second?
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Vitsky Lynch. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And then now into the chair's report. We all know there's been a lot going on. We've had weather, we've had things, but everybody's doing a good job managing that, and I appreciate that. And thank you for the great communication, Dr. Price. And I have to say, I have a high school student as well, so I did receive communication from Mr. Jackson that was, I thought, quite excellent in terms of there were a lot of events that go on in high school, and it's hard to know if they're going to go forward or not, et cetera. And he communicated through Twitter, through email, through robocall, and was very clear. So I can tell you as a parent, I appreciate that, and I heard that from other parents as well. The other report is that started 35 minutes ago. There's the master plan, second public forum to talk about future plans for our town, and we're glad you're all here. But that's going on as well, and that's obviously very important to all of us too. And that's really all I had right now.
I have a few things. First of all, as of right now, this very moment, the last day of school is Wednesday, June 27th. I'm hoping that's the last day of school. I'm looking towards next week. I'm hoping that's the last day of school. And I do want to appreciate everyone's patience. We have called 9 snow days this year, 2 of them being in October with the power. And, you know, it's been a very difficult trying. Mr. Mealy, Mr. Gilligan, and I have spent hours on phones at random hours. And for everyone who questions what we're doing, we're really trying hard each and every day to make the right decision. And so I really appreciate everyone's patience and support. And I sincerely hope I have called my last snow day ever as a superintendent of North Andover Public Schools. That's the first thing. Second of all, both Mr. Gilligan and I had the pleasure of being in our middle school. I was at the middle school. He was at high school today for at 10 o'clock when some of our students, many of our students, chose to walk out of class. I can report from the middle school that it was a very powerful moment for me when hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids filled the cafeteria, both sides, and 6th graders lined the halls. And for 17 minutes, they were completely and utterly silent. I'm a parent of a middle schooler. I am surprised that for 17 minutes, hundreds and hundreds of kids were silent. And I actually got quite emotional. I couldn't really hold it together. And it was just so powerful to see our kids in a very respectful, very thoughtful, very caring way say, this matters. And it was really a powerful moment. So I'll let Mr. Gilligan tell you what happened at the high school.
Very similar at the high school, except I would probably say it was closer to 800 or 900 kids. Very respectfully came down to the cafeteria, and maybe a little bit different than the middle school because the staff was putting them in the right direction. Kids filed in. There was a couple student leaders that got up and spoke and talked about honoring the lives lost in Florida. And when they said there was going to be 17 minutes of silence, I was thinking, with this many kids, we might not have 17 seconds of silence. I mean, it was a big group, and completely respectful, very powerful. And also, I want to point out, not only did the administration and Chet do a great job, but we were really thankful for the police support at the middle school, several offices, and at North Andover High School, they had 2 detectives and 3 police officers there as well. So very well done, student run, and giving them the ability to voice their opinions in terms of honoring those lives.
And we'd all be very proud that they were very respectful and demonstrated the race values. So I think we should be proud as a community and our students today. Third, total change of gears. I just want to acknowledge our boys basketball team that had an amazing run this year, the Division II North Sectional champions. They lost a roller coaster of a game last night. I think that's fair, Mr. McDevitt, you were there. To a very, very talented Boston Tech team. And I just want to congratulate the students, the players, and Coach Tanglis on an amazing run. It was really wonderful. I think it's the farthest the team has gone in over 40 years. So, yeah. So really an impressive run, and congratulate them. And then changing gears again completely is Mr. Mealy and I are working quite diligently on our middle school statement of interest. We are not changing much, but we are changing a little bit, waiting on a number for from the architects in terms of how much we anticipate a renovation of the middle school to cost, which is what they asked us to put in there. We can very easily roll over last year's submittal, which you know was very well received. We have a few small points that we're going to add. And our plan is to bring it in front of you at our next meeting for a vote on April 5th. It is due on April 6th. We understand we are being a little tight on this one. However, we are not changing what we asked you all to vote on last year, and I think that there's broad-based support. We will go in front of the Board of Selectmen on the 26th of March for similar support. Again, I think the hardest part of the statement of interest was having Mr. McDevitt read the motion, which took about 5 minutes. So
that's right.
Right, so that is our plan on April 5th. I just wanted to let you know. You might want to tag somebody else out.
Can you say again?
The Massachusetts School Building Authority, which then gives us, if we are invited into the process, there's a potential for reimbursement on the renovation project.
And you said the 26th is the
Board of Selectmen and the April 5th. So I just want to let you know we will send you out a draft of it. There will be very small changes that we will highlight, 3 or 4 sentences changes that we'll highlight. Okay, that's all I have. Anything else? My team? Okay, great.
Can I just say something really quickly? So, I mean, obviously I have 3 kids in the school and 2 at the middle school and 1 at the elementary, and there were a lot of parents that were kind of concerned or cautious what the walkout was going to be like. Were kids going to do it? Were they going to be allowed? Were they going to be repercussions, punishments? You know, we've heard in the country that there were detentions for students, you know, who did that. And whether or not I think people agree or disagree with it, the communication that came from you on we're allowing the kids to go out. Here's, you know, not that you can prescribe exactly what's going to happen, but here's the steps that we're taking for the students to be safe, whether they're in the school or out of the school, that there isn't punishment for that. As not only a school committee member, but a parent, I really, truly respect and want to say thank you for that. I mean, that eliminated a ton of doubt and a ton of mystery for parents and the community. And I've heard from many, many people how much they appreciated it. So thank you.
I echo that, and I also appreciate the fact that, you know, yesterday was the day, but accommodations were made for today. And so an easy, sneaky way out would have been, well, that was yesterday, it's gone by. And so I'm glad that didn't happen. So thank you.
You all would have been really proud of our kids.
Yes.
Great. So do we have a school building committee update?
Sure. So just to dovetail on what the superintendent said about the middle school project, I don't think Ms. Picard or Ms. Lynch were on the school committee last year when we submitted that statement of interest. So
No.
any questions that you have, I'll happily answer. And I know Jim and Jen can answer questions as well. But it was very well received, as mentioned by the SBA last year. I feel very comfortable going in there with basically the same proposal with a few tweaks to it. And I'm hopeful that the Board of Selectmen will vote the same way they did last year, unanimously to support us in that. So it's not a big deal that we're cutting it that close to the wire. As long as we get that there by the April 6th, that's all that matters. So I know on March 1st, I think that's our last meeting, I said we're schools on budget, on time. And then we had 3 nor'easters since then. Great. So I'm not saying we're off schedule yet because we're not 100% sure, but obviously the site work has taken a step backwards. We had originally, if you recall correctly, in our proposal and that our contractor bid on to start site work in April anyways, but we had talked with them to get in the ground a lot earlier, and we were planning on being in the ground next Friday, March 23rd. We are not confident we're going to be in the ground next March 23rd. We expect the site contractor, which is different than the building contractor. The site contractor is different than the building contractor. To have a meeting early next week, Monday or Tuesday, hopefully, to find out what it's going to take to get that site at least prepared to be prepared to get going. How much snow we need to remove, and on Monday that might be one number. On Tuesday that might be another number, depending on what happens. So obviously, Mother Nature threw us a little curveball, but we've made we've taken that into account. So we're still on schedule for August. I'm not sure we're on schedule for getting in the ground on March 23rd. We did have a school building committee meeting and a construction meeting yesterday, and we're going through the finishes and stuff like that of the walls and the tiles, which is exciting. Not my strong point, so I've artfully deferred that to my coach, my vice chair on that. I think we'll know more next week, obviously, on how quickly we're going to get there. But as far as some of the concerns, I know we've heard a lot of concerns from some of the Atkinson School parents on this. I've been in touch with the president of the Atkinson School PTO to have a meeting with them to talk about the traffic changes. There will be, quite frankly, two separate traffic changes. There's a short-term one and a long-term one. But Jim has been working very closely with our site engineer as well as the architect on getting the plan in place. Yeah, principals. So we hope to have those meetings set up in, next week, I think. Yeah.
We do have diagrams that we'll be sending out to the families that are different for middle school, ECC, and Atkinson. So, the challenge with this date is we'd like to wait till early next week to know when the fence is actually going to go up. And that really is dependent on snow. So it'll come in enough time when we actually do the traffic changes. You're looking at some pretty good traffic people right here, and we'll be out there in force to help families understand. But we've done a lot of work. Jim's done an amazing job. I mean, even to a point where they brought in a bus and made sure it can turn around. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. Anything to add?
No, you're right. I mean, okay, that's
right. And I just tweeted out a picture. The steel has arrived in Pennsylvania. And so you have to remember that's the beauty of modular construction is there are two things that can happen simultaneously, which normally cannot happen on a construction site, which is site work and construction of the actual building. So what we're going to be seeing is the site work, but the construction of the actual building, the steel has arrived to our factory in Pennsylvania, so they're getting started.
Delayed by the tariff.
Our reflective vests.
Our reflective vest, I have one, but probably not one that'll fit you.
One other question that I heard from some Atkinson parents toward what you said a little bit, Mr. Tracy, was the question was around where are the kids going to have recess in this. So that you don't have to answer this now, but that's one of the
we're ready to answer that question.
It'll be a challenge, and I think people just need to be ready for not only traffic wise, but what they're used to.
Time, right?
Things are going to be different for a little while,
yep.
And I think people need to understand that we need to be open up front about it going forward.
And I think people know that. I think the biggest question is, will there still be outdoor time in spring after a winter like this? And hopefully the answer is yes, we have space for that.
Oh yeah, this spring is not going to be concerned for the Atkinson. It really is in terms of the bigger issue is going to be where the kindergartner is going to play next year prior to the middle school fields project. Right. So we are going to have a year or so of time that we are going to have to punt a little, and we're going to have to get creative. And Mary Lou and Greg Landry have talked about it. I mean, that is going to be the issue. But for the spring, I'll even say is go to far as we have not moved summer fun from Atkinson this summer. We are that confident that the space will be fine. The implications on Atkinson are going to be quite small. Obviously, we've had to move the extended school year from the ECC.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was one of the questions. Okay.
Is there any update on the middle school CPA project from last
They
night?
had a CPC
Meeting.
meeting last night, and
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything.
Oh, you went to OPEB, right?
I had a different meeting at the same time, yes.
A lot of acronyms.
Yes,
A lot of
yes.
acronyms.
So I know they met, and I haven't been able
Yeah.
to find anything else out yet.
There's just a lot of moving parts, and I think people just got to be patient, and we're going to try to get as much information out as possible, but we're dealing with a couple unknowns with the snow.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, our first old business item is the second reading of the overnight trip to now, I think, Montpellier in France. Is that what I remember? And Dr. Price researched something for us about the exchange changing a little bit.
Yeah, so this is not a true exchange. This is a language school that we're sending our kids to. We have kids from a different school come, so you had asked specifically.
Right.
It is no longer a direct exchange.
Right. But are we still having kids come
We are
here?
still
Okay.
hosting students, but it's
Just not the exchange?
Correct.
Until maybe, or just...
Well, the challenge has
uncertain?
been we have not been able to be consistent on our end, and so if you can't have it consistent, it becomes hard to maintain an exchange.
Okay, thank you. So I don't think there are any other questions about this trip that came up last time. I don't know if there are any new questions, or if we could look at approving this.
So I would, I move that the committee approves, as presented in the packet, the 2019 overnight trip to France.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Vitsky Lynch. I can never remember if it needs to be a roll call. We'll do a roll call.
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Trissy?
Yes.
Ms. Pard?
Yes.
Ms. Lynch?
Yes.
And yes. That's it. Thank you. Okay. Now, what our audience is waiting for. So we're going to discuss the school naming recommendations, and I'd like to ask that we start with the discussion. We have the 4 options presented here. The Ann Bradstreet School, the Cochichewick School, the Freeman Family School, and the North Andover Early Childhood Center, which is the current name. Who would like to share their thoughts to start? Sir.
This Madam Chair.
This Madam Chair. So actually, that's fine. If you want to start, Helen, as the person who was the chair of the subcommittee, that would be great.
Yeah, so I would, one thing that I would take into consideration, that I would alert us to, is that these meetings were not attended by the public. They were public meetings, they were posted, and there was no, it was a conversation between people that were having confidential and caring conversation. So there was no input from outside for the discussion that we had and for the votes that we took within our subcommittee. So I would just say we've had 4 impassioned conversations, more than that actually. Each one of these names has been brought forward in an impassioned way, except for Cochichewick, and so I'm going to do that a little bit. But I would just caution us against feeling that the subcommittee held all knowledge. Right? I mean, there's a lot more knowledge in the community, and if there were different names in front of us, we would hear different impassioned speeches in our public comment. So, I really do encourage us to make a decision as a committee that's been elected, not appointed, that's been public, that's heard from the public in a lot of different ways. So my short and impassioned speech about Cochichewick is that it's a compelling name because it's a place name. It is part of our town seal. It predates our European settlement. It encompasses those who were well before English speakers and those who will be well after us, whatever languages they speak. The concerns that people have expressed about Cochichewick is that it's hard to say, it's hard to spell, but judging from what we've just seen kindergartners do in a few months of working together, I do have confidence that our community can learn to say and spell Cochichewick, that it levels the playing field. That it levels the playing field for students who are coming in, whether their first language is English or Spanish or some other language, that they would all be coming in and having an opportunity to learn a new word together and have a new name together. And in fact, since probably most preschool and kindergarten students are not reading phonetically, it might actually be easier for them. So that's the short and impassioned speech for Kutchikwick.
Anybody else like to share their thoughts on one or all four?
I'll just start off where we talked about a little bit 2 weeks ago, just to say thank you to Helen and the subcommittee for the work they did. I thought it was a very comprehensive list. There's a lot of great names on this list, and whatever we decide tonight, I don't think it's a slight to any of these other names on here. I made the same case when we've done Educator of the Year, the Educator Hall of Fame thing. Just to be nominated or be discussed, I think, is an honor. So people shouldn't feel slighted, and I hope they don't. But at the end of the day, we're elected to make decisions, and we're charged with making a decision on naming this school. Had a lot of impassioned, I wouldn't say a lot of impassioned people, but, I've heard obviously from Karen, we heard from Mark today as well about those two specific names, and I know, sorry, came out, yeah, about Mary Lou, who I love, and has been a great part of the school building committee. But where I think I like to come down is naming the school after Anne Bradstreet. And I will tell you, I grew up in this town. I didn't go to the Bradstreet School, but I always thought that school was named after Anne Bradstreet. I think everyone in this town thinks that school was named after Anne Bradstreet. And I never, when Helen called a couple weeks ago and we talked on the phone extensively about this issue, and she told me it wasn't named after Anne Bradstreet, I really, gave it a second thought, because at first it wasn't really at the top of my list. And I think to hear that it was named because, her husband, after her husband, was just because of the time, it just seemed to me, righting or wrong, it'd be really important, I think, to name this after Anne Bradstreet. She's one of our most historical figures, important figures from town. And our prior kindergarten early education center was named the Bradstreet School. So for that reason, I would propose we name after Anne Bradstreet.
I don't disagree with Mr. Teresi. However, I look at the work that the subcommittee did, and the Freeman Family School was the only one that was the majority for first choice, and the only one that was first and second choice by all the members. So to me, that just rose to the top as being an overwhelming choice of the committee. I like the idea of it for what it stands for. I think it fits in great with our raised values. I like the family name in it aspect. I like the message it sends, and I like the opportunity it affords us to teach our children about this, because somebody said it, I think, at our last meeting, or maybe it's been talked about elsewhere, is that our middle schoolers don't even know what any of those houses stand for, which is unfortunate, because they're very important, all three of those names in the middle school. So I do like the naming of after a woman. I do appreciate that too. But I would say that Freeman Family is my first choice.
So I'm probably one of the people that I think pushed hardest for us to have a naming meeting and a naming conversation regarding this. And I think the funny thing to me is, like Mr. Teresi said, when you get the Hall of Fame nomination for the educators, it's really, really difficult to decide between any of them. And so, I think that's just a challenge that we have tonight. One of the things, I'm not in favor of Kutchikwick, if I said that correctly. I'm not sure that I did. The North Andover Early Childhood Center has been the name, and it's been the name for a number of years. And I think that it is always going to have a place, and we're going to remember the fact that it has been the ECC, and we may, in fact, refer to it as the ECC. So I just have a little bit of a question for the committee. If we were to look at, for example, the Anne Bradstreet or the Freeman Family, for example, would it be agreeable or allowed, I guess? We're naming it, so we can name it whatever we want. But the Anne Bradstreet, for example, Early Childhood Center, or the Freeman Family Early Childhood Center, or perhaps the North Andover. And that just kind of keeps it the way that it is. Last meeting, I think 2 weeks or so ago, I asked a question of whether or not we were naming just the kindergarten side or what the existing ECC is. And we're naming the entire building as an actual unit. So I feel like to move from the ECC and to not maintain that in the name is really wrong, because that's what kids refer to it, that's what we as the community refer to it. Even if it's the Ann Bradstreet ECC, I think we will still, out of somewhat habit, call it the ECC. So I would, I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to go tonight on my decision, but I would like to see, instead of the word school on any of those, that all four end in the Early Childhood Center, whether it's the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center, the Pacheco Early Childhood Center, or the Freeman Family Early Childhood Center.
I like that. Early childhood or early education? I've heard of both. This says early child.
It's ECC has been Early Childhood Center.
Early Childhood Center.
So I'd love to bring in some discussion from the subcommittee when we talked about naming the school. You can see that the first three were moved and seconded and approved with school. One of the things we talked about was that children look forward to going to school. They don't look forward to going to center. So that was one of the reasons that the subcommittee used the word school throughout. But that doesn't mean we need to keep that, but that was one of the things we talked about. We also talked about keeping things simple, keeping them very plain, and so if we call it, you know, the whatever Early Childhood Center, it's a lot more words, and we're going to call it the ECC, which then kind of means nothing to the children. So those are we were intentionally simple, and we were intentionally using the word school in the other three. That doesn't mean this committee needs to keep that, or that was sacred. That was just the conversation that happened in that place.
Sure. I mean, but if we think of the Thompson School, we call it the Thompson School, not the private Albert E. Thompson School.
Except for Mr. Gilligan.
Except for Mr. Gilligan, in every single reference.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we're going to...
Bessie.
I'm sorry.
The Department of Education has
Okay.
it listed as private Albert E.
So, I mean, I still think, you know, if we called it the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center, we still will lovingly refer to it as the ECC. But the students would know it is the Ann Bradstreet, and they may, you know, have a nickname, just like many people do. The ABECC. I don't know if they'll go that far.
Too bad it's
that'll
not
that'll
ABC.
really throw up there anybody dyslexics in trouble. But I think that still gives them the opportunity to talk about poetry. I mean, the kindergartners were reading ridiculously well tonight, and I think it reinforces a lot of those pieces that are there.
So one other thing that I would bring up out of the subcommittee is that there is a natural human tendency to want to be inclusive, especially that's part of our raised values, and so trying to combine names and bring everything in. We have 23 names possible, and we're not going to be able to bring in 23, and that's without this committee
Sure.
coming up with new ones off the fly. So that's just an observation, that
Yep.
there's a natural tendency to want to be inclusive of more than one thing, and we could call it the Bradstreet Pacheco Freeman Early Childhood
No.
Center, and it would be terrible for all of them.
Right.
So I was going to go down a similar line as Mr. McDevitt, and if you'll bear with me, I'll have comments on my thoughts about all four of these. I like the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center, but I do hear the commentary about, you know, the ECC doesn't want to get lost in the kindergarten, and we've been calling the new addition the K complex. And for a lot of people in the town, the Bradstreet School is the kindergarten on Main Street across from CVS. Even though that's now a new building, it is sometimes referred to, I've heard some people call it like the Bradstreet on Main. I don't know if that's being used, hopefully not. So I don't dislike that, but I am sensitive to there is a legacy, and people, I worry that you're going to call this the new Bradstreet School, and that's the old Bradstreet School. So some thoughts there. I thought it was like Cochituick, So I heard it's Kachikawick. I'm not in favor of that one. I really like the Freeman Early Childhood Center. I understand that we have school, a house in the middle school that is currently called after Cato Freeman, but having a sophomore in high school, and I think Mr. McDevitt and I talked about this at the last meeting, everybody knows about the Sims Lobby. Nobody knew who Sims was, but knows about the Sims Lobby. I never knew there were 2 other houses. And I think we all agree, and this came up at the last meeting, that no matter what we choose tonight, we need to bring back that history, that knowledge, that understanding, that education of all our schools, what they're named and why. I always thought, back to Ann Bradstreet, I always thought Bradstreet was named after Ann. I didn't know about Simon, and until I was recently in the town hall, I didn't realize he was governor of Massachusetts. Sorry, I should have. I thought it was for Ann. I really like the Freeman School because, for me, we moved in the last several years to having an early childhood center of its own. We've moved to full-day kindergarten. We've moved to all-inclusive educating the family, the child, and getting them in early. And I think Freeman Early Childhood Center would allow us to do that, and with the legacy of the fact that the whole family is being treated and educated, and I like that a lot. I'm not opposed to the North Andover Early Childhood Center, but I think that's a lost opportunity to not name it after something. And one of you just mentioned that, Mr. DeSalvo, I think, just mentioned that. I think that would be, I hate to say a cop-out, but it would be an easy way out. So I personally like the Freeman Early Childhood Center.
Can I bring in one more thing that I forgot from the subcommittee conversations? Sounds like I'm bashing the ECC. I'm certainly not. I'm just trying to bring in information that was shared. That if we call it the Early Childhood Center, and at some point in the future, it's deemed to be used for something other than early childhood education, that could be limiting to the building in some way. There was also conversation about the fact that when we're looking at a brick and mortar kind of building, that those may have 100 or a longer year history. When we're looking at this type of building, it may or may not be around 150 years from now. So those were talked about. And whether or not it would be a useful space for something other than early childhood, given that it's going to have teeny toilets and other...
Lots of them, though.
Lots of them. Wait, those work fine, those desks.
Look at these two.
And other, appropriately sized spaces for preschoolers and elementary schools. Kindergarten students.
So we've heard a whole lot of differences of opinion, which makes this challenging. And obviously, everyone who's here tonight and all of us are taking this very seriously. It is something, while we could certainly rename it in the future if it became an elementary school, despite the teeny toilets. That's not for us to worry about, I don't think, now. But, this is a name that will be with us, which is, I think, why there's a lot of love for Bradstreet, because there's a lot of history with that. But I think it was actually interesting to hear the opportunity of maybe changing the name of the middle school house to Ann Bradstreet. Who knows? That's kind of interesting.
I hope in a few years we'll have a chance to revisit the entire middle school, but we'll see.
Right.
That's down the road.
So, it's kind of rolling wild dice here, but I don't know if anybody wants to put forth a name.
I'll put forth, I move to call it the Freeman Early Childhood Center.
We have a second. Am I allowed to second as the chair? I would like to second that. So we have a motion by Ms. Vitsky-Lynch, a second by Ms. Mabley, and recognizing that we have a lot of differences of opinion. Is there any more discussion about that? Is there any reason why anyone would like to
Can you say the name again that we would be voting on?
What'd you say?
I am okay with any of the name, but I was going on the...
She said the Freeman Early Childhood Center.
I did say Freeman Early Childhood Center, or Freeman Family Early Childhood Center, any combination thereof. Right.
So, we would like to take a vote on that. Starting with Mr. Trissy,
No.
Mr. McDevitt. Ms. Picard.
No.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we have, that motion was not going through, so do we have another recommendation? Motion.
So I'll move that we name the new kindergarten building the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Trissy. And we'll start again. Any other comment or discussion? Mr. Trissy.
Aye.
Ms. Picard. Oh, yes, Ms. Picard. That's how I did it, right? Yeah.
No, you did McDevitt.
Oh, sorry, I did do McDevitt. Mr. McDevitt, sorry.
Aye.
Ms. Picard.
Aye.
Ms. Lynch.
Aye.
And I will vote yes as well. So the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center, is that what I just heard?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
As we go forward, I don't think it's necessary or appropriate for a motion right now, but as we go forward with the rest of this year and we begin the Hall of Fame recognition, I would ask that all the educators here who would be eligible for the Hall of Fame be considered nominated for the Hall of Fame. So I don't know what we would need to do.
Say it again, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning part.
As we go forward with the Educator Hall of Fame nominations, that all the educators who are on this list who would be eligible for that be considered nominated for the Educator Hall of Fame this year. And if I recall our policy correctly, that means they would be carried forward to all other years for consideration.
I think we have to double check the policy, but I think that there's a form that specifically they have to be nominated through that.
So-
but once they are, we are kept in perpetuity. So
Okay, so would there be any reason that I couldn't complete that form using the information provided by the public
I
for
don't
each
think
of these
so.
names?
I, off the top of my head, I can't remember. I don't see why not. I think you could.
Okay, so I will.
10 friends.
So I will intend to do that, and I will alert those educators who would qualify for that to be included in that.
Thank you.
You think Barack will come?
He wasn't a North Andover educator for 20 years, or
So
He was a teacher, though.
was he?
Yeah, I think he was. Or no, I'm sorry.
Not here.
So,
Okay.
Obviously not here.
So, Mrs. Picard, the only thing I would say is, for any of the names, I think part of the policy is that they have to have been retired for 5 years. For the
So that's why
Educator
we
Hall
need to
of Fame.
double check the policy, make sure you're within
So
that.
if somebody is a current employee or retired last year, I don't think they're eligible.
Okay.
I think that's
Okay.
correct.
And so in
Sorry.
that case, I would alert those who nominated that when the person has been retired or deceased.
I don't know if the policy says that.
Okay.
If it doesn't, we should update it.
We'll look again at the policy.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mary Lou is alive.
And employed. Yes.
You know, I think it's pretty exciting that on this list were two people who are intimately involved in making this happen, Mary Lou Connors and Andrew Mailer. And I just want to thank both of them from the bottom of my heart, because without either of them, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. And I understand they were not eligible for a naming, but I think it is just a real testament to those two people. Very different roles in our community, but two of the greatest folks I've had the pleasure of working with here in North Andover, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank both of them.
Thank you. That's great.
But just for clarity, they were.
Oh, I thought there was you had to. No.
It's not in the policy.
Oh, I
That was
apologize.
somebody else's misunderstanding as
Okay.
well.
Well, my comments still remain. They're
Yes,
amazing
absolutely.
people who this community is so lucky to have. Yes.
Can I just make a small suggestion, Mr. Gillian, soon to be Dr. Gilligan? I mean, I think what we have learned as we've gone through this is we didn't really even understand where all the names came from of our schools, right? And so, we talked about Franklin, and I said, what's it named after? Like Franklin Street, because when you look over some of the history of what we have traditionally named our schools after, it's, a landmark or, something, a prominent
Property.
family name. I had no idea it was Ben Franklin. Absolutely no idea. And that should be something that the students of this town, whether they attend Franklin or not, learn about and understand. And perhaps Mr. Clark, has that as part of his, program in school and environment and all that. I know my children don't know why the Kittredge School is named exactly why it is. We didn't know. I have an 8th grader in the Freeman wing who didn't know that there was a name for the wing. I said, you walk by it every day. He's like, oh, I'm not looking there.
Right.
So, I just think it's really important that if we're going to talk about the history and why it's there, that as part of the administration that we talk about it. There's a reason why we've done this, and
I completely agree.
Like the Albert E. Thompson.
Yeah. And I think it's an opportunity. Maybe we can have a secondary night with the kids in, and elementary night. Benjamin Franklin Academy used to be at the VFW. There's a lot of great history. We have a lot of great historical records with Joyce Bradshaw at the Historical Society and within the schools itself. And I think it would be pretty exciting to do that. And I think, one of the things that's most exciting is at North Andover High, the history department chair, Brian Sheehy, is starting a North Andover History Lab in one of the rooms at the high school. And that's going to have transcripts from a Johnson High graduate who did an audio interview from 1910, 1920s, the 30s, all different components to it. And I think that's a good start. That's going to open up, I think it's going to open up by the end of the school year.
Yeah, I know they've been collecting documents.
awesome.
Yeah,
and
they've been collecting
textbooks
documents. And we can certainly move along with the rest because there is a long history. And there's several schools that the buildings are still there or the houses are still there, but they are no longer in use. So I think it's a neat opportunity, and I think we could work closely. I think we know someone who's on the board at the Historical Society.
Okay.
Surprised we didn't see him tonight.
We saw him 2 weeks ago. I think that's why.
But
Master planning.
yes.
Right.
But no, I agree. I think that that's certainly my passion. I don't know if it's everyone else's passion, but we could totally do it. Totally doable.
I'd actually just like to acknowledge Elaine Toomey here as a kindergarten teacher. My kids do know what the Sergeant School stands for because Mrs. Toomey taught them that, even though she used to think it was the Circle School. We called it the Circle School.
That's right. No, I think, we all agree. Thank you for bringing that up again. That's not the last you're going to hear from us on that, I'm sure, Mr. Gilligan. So, but I know that's something you like, so that's exciting.
We've had several ideas. I'm happy to share.
Yeah, I mean, there's 7 or 8 schools I know of that are no longer in existence with the names. But it goes back to Mr. McDevitt's point. A lot of them were named after streets they were on.
Right.
Union Street School, Merrimack Street School, the Center School.
Right. Great. Thank you. So we're on to the budget update for Mr. Mealy.
So the only highlight, and Jen mentioned the last one. There's a little bit of a lag. Billing. But older than usual.
When it works.
Yeah.
When the electricity works.
When it works.
Yeah.
So we're gonna look at that. Use that way, like last pounds. We'll launch that, but other than that, go generate less.
Right. And in terms of the snow removal part, it's just the driveways of the schools, and a lot of that's handled by the custodial staff, right?
Yeah.
Other than the road.
Yeah. Still a big impact from water.
Good.
Obviously,
Okay.
the town does.
Right. I didn't know how much that hit us.
Going along well until
Right.
last week. They cover the driveways block. Our response.
Mm-hmm. Right.
On their normal time with some time, depending on the storm.
Right.
But that average out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Mealy. So we have a new business, a first reading of a robotics overnight trip.
We're excited to report that two of our teams, a high school team and a middle school team, were qualified through the Southern New England Regional VEX Robotics Team Championship to go to the VEX Worlds in Kentucky. And this is always one of, I believe that's right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, this is always one of those trips we put in at the last minute, because until you qualify, we aren't going to put it in. It is exciting. We're going to have the high school and the middle school. We've connected both of those advisors. And so we're going to have approximately 17 students, 11 from the high school and 6 from the middle school traveling. You know, the challenge of this trip, as with many of our trips, is it's about $900 a student, plus it's about $3,000 to get the robot there. So it does become an expensive endeavor for our students. It is an amazing experience, and we will do everything we can to support them in terms of helping them fundraise, et cetera. The timeline just becomes very tight for them. Mike Motherway at the high school has extensive experience doing this. If you remember last year, our team placed 6th in the world.
Right.
So he is quite adept at making all of this work and figuring out how to get a robot halfway across our country. And he is going to work with John Miller, a parent, and Jim Goslin to help them shepherd them through this process. Because I do believe this is the first time we have a middle school team going.
Yes, that's what I was alerted to.
So everything is here. We put both of them together. It seems silly to have a middle school one and a high school one. They're staying in the same place. They're traveling in similar methods, and they're trying to work together, mostly to have Mike be able to support this new team since he's so expert at it.
And then the chaperoning kind of covers across both groups or separate chaperoning
Yeah, so we'd have
situations?
separate chaperones. And in general, the way that this has worked in the past has been the parents go. So
Right.
we've got a lot of parental chaperones.
That's what I've seen before.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting thing at this. When you qualify at this level,
That's amazing.
there's very few parents, and there's often many parents who try to get there.
Right.
Can I just ask a quick question? Based upon logistics of travel, I think it's a little over, a month away.
Yep.
5 weeks.
Is there anything that, our next meeting is the 6th. Is there anything that they need to book today in order to make sure?
We always do this and just assume if you guys don't ask a lot of questions, we tell them to go ahead. I do think that this is a very tight timeline, and if you would be willing to suspend the rules and vote it, I think it would be helpful to our teams.
Okay. So I would move that we suspend I'm blanking right now. Move that we suspend the rules so that we can proceed to a second reading.
So approve, motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Trissy. Roll call, so Mr. Trissy?
Aye.
Ms. Picard?
Aye.
Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Mr. McDevitt?
Aye.
Ms. Maley? Aye. So we're suspended the rules.
So I will move that we approve tonight, as presented in the packet, the overnight trip to the Robotics World Competition in Louisville, Kentucky, for both the high school and the middle school students.
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Trissy. Mr. Trissy?
Aye.
Ms. Picard?
Aye.
Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Devitt?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Thank you.
Tremendous accomplishment. That's very exciting.
I will say that the students were very appreciative of you going, and it was really hard for them to keep that under wraps but they wanted to tell you personally.
It was really awesome to hear them talk. And, one of the things I think I'd ask you, Mr. Gilligan, but one of the coolest things about this VEX competition is this concept of kids learning through failure. And when you build a robot, you fail so many more times than you succeed. And, if we're really serious about thinking about how we best prepare our students for the life ahead of them, is this concept of resilience and learning from mistakes is something that is so important. And it's something that's really hard to teach in schools. And it's so wonderful to see them talk about their failures as opportunities rather than as challenges that they couldn't overcome. And it was really fun to hear them talk about it very concretely. They're like, you don't understand. We do like 98 things, and one of them gets into the robot. Right? And it's fun to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I actually thought that one of the coolest parts was that they were talking about the teamwork. So when something did go wrong, You know, they all had specific roles that they had worked out. They said that at first they weren't working all that well together, but then, you know, they said, if this part breaks, you know, she's the best at this. And the ability to communicate and work as a team was pretty cool.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Just about the competition, do you know, and you may not, and that's okay, is there a high school level? I think there's a college level, and then is there a middle school?
There is,
or
I believe
junior
that
high?
they are different levels.
Okay. Awesome.
Pretty exciting.
That's fantastic.
Great.
Thank you. We are on to our second public comment. If there is anyone who would like to make a public comment, microphone's yours. Seeing none, does anyone else have anything to add this evening?
Madam Chair?
Sir.
First of all, I want to thank the Sargent School folks for inviting us here again. Very great presentation. I think we started this last year at Atkinson. We're looking forward next year to carry this tradition to Franklin and Kittredge, my two old stomping grounds. Okay, Doctor?
Middle school and high school.
Middle school as well. Yep, middle school as well. That'd be good. I also want to thank Jen and also the letter that Chet Jackson put out. I know you mentioned it, Andrew, before, but I thought the letter that was sent out for the school walkout was absolutely on point. As someone who, you know, gets a little political from time to time, I thought this had a potential to really explode. And I know it did explode in other communities, and I think it was handled beautifully. So I want to thank you and thank Chet for putting those letters out. And lastly, I just want to say congrats to the high school basketball team and to Coach Tanglis. You know, went through a lot a few years ago in this town, and I'm glad he stuck with us. And I think the kids really responded to him, and I'm really thankful that he's one of ours. So.
I'd like to congratulate Dr. Gilligan.
Yes.
for getting his dissertation.
Thank you so much.
It's exciting news. Any other?
Just a quick question. I know a number of things have already been mentioned tonight, but the last day of school is scheduled for June 27th. I've had a number of parents ask. There's no change in the high school graduation date?
We don't change the high school graduation date.
Okay.
That's good to hear, because I did hear sudden rumors actually this morning.
Yeah, and so having been a high school principal for a whole bunch of years, there's a certain amount of time that high school seniors are allowed to graduate prior to the end of school. Those of us in high school education have long argued that that is the date you set at the beginning of the year. And to move a high school graduation date with families and all of that is just really not doable. And if there are problems with our governing authority, like the Mass DESC, I'd be happy to have those conversations with them. We're doing our best, and we don't have any control over snow. So we always go back the numbers of days we can from 185, which is a really reasonable thing for us to do.
Sure. I just know that some students and actually teachers actually were not sure if it would change or not. And I thought it was locked, but I just wanted to clarify that.
That's excellent.
That's why seniors are always the most exuberant about snow days.
I've read their tweets.
They tweet me. There's definitely a difference in the senior tweets to me.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Is there a mechanism in place where either DC or the governor can waive the 180-day limit? Does that happen? Because obviously we're not an island here. The school districts across the state are over. We're at 8 or 9. There's people in the double digits right now.
Andover's at 10.
Yeah, there's an extraordinary measures relief that the commissioner can actually use. But every commissioner that's been there for the last, I'd say, 20 years has absolutely said you got to do 180. I don't think, unless it was like the flood of the century or something like that. But I haven't heard of any communities ever getting a waiver.
Because I got to think a lot of the cities, they cancel school a lot more because they have a lot more walkers.
Yeah.
That they've had many more school days than than we have.
As you may know, Andover's going to school on Saturdays.
Right.
We are not there yet. I hope.
You can mandate that, really?
It's different in different contracts, employee contracts. But we have to be done by.
The students have to go.
You have to hold a school day.
We held one on Good Friday a couple years ago, if you remember that.
Yes, we did.
It was a day off. It was a religious holiday. We observed it. Went to school.
So, I am pretty confident that this committee is going to look favorably upon the work of Ms. Marks and her committee with the alternative school days. I think this is a year that this is now understanding why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. can't wait for the proposal.
They're working hard. In collaboration with the union, I just do want to comment, which is exciting.
That's great. Yes, Ms. McCard.
I just really want to thank the subcommittee that did for this committee for making this not easy in any way. And for the benefit of all of us, I would love to have the subcommittee cutting. I think Ms. Gagari, when she writes these notes, will remember that. She probably the invitation.
She does.
So we can have the subcommittee members invited to the ribbon cutting when it happens before school starts next year.
Got to find those big scissors, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we are ready to go, I would entertain a motion to move to executive session to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiations with the North Andover Professional Support Association and custodial unions, and not return to regular session.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Picard, second by Mr. McDevitt.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. We will adjourn to executive session. Thank you all. Have a lovely evening.
Oh.
It's hard to get up from the chair.
It's easy to go down.
That's all I want to say.
Thank you.